Hello, YouTube subscriber and friends. So I want to show you this new used, but almost like new, I should say, used Mantua steam locomotive I purchased. It is a 060 tank switcher. The item number is number 393-021. It looks like this guy right here. This is it. So I just purchased him. Really cool looking steam locomotive. I got him on eBay, as I said. And I ran him DC. Runs pretty darn good. Front and rear lights work. Now this is a Mantua. I don't know how far back this particular model goes, but I can tell you it's got to be a little bit further back, because I recently opened this up, and let me just quickly show you how you open this up. Mine is already open to get the shell off, but there's a long screw that goes right in here, and you just pull that out, unscrew that, and I took out the coupler back here. That's another screw, but then this just lifts up, and then you can see these two right back here, these two little notches. Okay, it just pulls right out of there. Be careful when you're doing so, though, because you have a lot of wires connected to the lights. Okay, but as I always do, I have this little sponge nearby for this. So then I started looking at everything going on under the hood on this guy. Quite different than anything I've seen, and I noticed I have not been able to find very many people who have converted these, although I know it's possible. I've read, but I haven't seen a step-by-step process. But I can see some of the areas. First of all, what I'll probably do is disconnect all this lighting. I can see that this white wire is a common wire for both lights, because what that does is it comes up into this section, and then the lights split front and back right here. Okay, so this is the common. Now that common connection is coming from one of the motor leads down here, the lower one, right? And then the other lights, the other two lights, look to be powered. That's these two right here, front and back. They're powered by the other motor lead right here. And then we've got a track lead here, possibly one here. So I have to really break this down and take a closer look and do some testing. But one thing I can say too, lastly, is that this motor, okay, is this metal sitting right on metal. So we are definitely going to have to isolate everything around this motor. So that's where I'm at with this. And one more thing to take note of: when you have this shell off, be careful. Handle this section very carefully, because it will move on you. Okay. I can see some stuff's already misaligned, so you have to be very careful, because it'll move on you. Okay. But anyway, when we come back and I take a closer look at this, we will figure out how to take it apart and make room for a new decoder. Okay, so I took a series of pictures of this arrangement of wires, and placed a little bit of blue painter's tape on the ones that are definitely connected to the rear. Okay. All right. Just waiting for my soldering iron here, which heats up pretty quick. There it is. Okay. Got that one. Okay. All right, this might help me pull that out of there. It's coming. There we go. Okay, so I have all the wires disconnected. For the time being, I left a little bit of this wire connected to the copper tabs that connect the track to the wheels there. And then I loosened these two screws. Okay, so this motor now will slide right out. I know that the Taiwan and all that goes on the top. So this is metal, that's metal. A lot of metal touching metal. So I'm not sure yet what's going to come of this. It'll be very sensitive, so I know the rod isn't touching the metal. That's a good thing. But I've got to get the smallest amount of tape in all of these areas. And then another thing to note, these screws are fastening it in place also, so we're gonna have to isolate right here. See where the screw lays over. So we got to isolate that, this, all of this, all of it. All right, that's going to be a big job, people, but we're going to do it. Okay, so what I have done so far is completely isolated this motor in any metal. So, and then there's this little back piece that will be touching metal too. Okay, so this will isolate all that, and it fits pretty snug still, and this turns just fine. We're going to see if this works. I mean, these are the practices. Okay, so this fits in here like so. Okay. All right. It's a bit snugger than it was before, but that's okay. I should say, is snugger a word? Okay, so far we have a fully isolated motor from all metal. Okay. Now I'm going to look into exactly, we should have our motor power back here. We do have track power here, but I'm still investigating the right side track power. I'm a little bit confused about that at the moment, so we're looking into it. Okay, so through some trial and error, this is what I came up with the connections, okay? Disregard all of these wires right here, okay? So let's follow, and if you go back and you look at the photos of how the wiring for the lighting was set up, this is how I figured this out. All right, so we've got our orange from here's our decoder. Let me pan back a little bit so we stay detailed here. Here's our decoder. Okay, decoder's here. Here is one of our motor leads going to the motor lead there. It's flipping around. And we got the gray one going to this motor lead. Remember, the lights were hooked up to these motor leads, okay? They were also hooked up. Here was a common. This is kind of a ground. What this ground is doing, it's supplying power to the right side track, okay? And then here's our left side track. If we're going this way forward, here's the left side track, and this goes right down to these copper contacts down in here that rub the wheels. So that's where we're at, and I haven't put it back on the track yet, but I had a flimsier piece connected to this little screw right here. But what I went ahead and did was, they have this little copper piece that has a hole in it that was actually connected to this here, and I just trimmed it off. That's where that was initially here. But these are the connections I've made, you know, and then I soldered a wire right to that little piece. So this is, I was getting a few, it was kind of cutting out on me, but it was probably because of that. And it's also probably because the wheels are very dirty on this, especially this one right here. You can probably see it right there. I'll probably get my little pen out, but I'm going to try this out again. Right now, I don't have the two screws in right here, okay? This is metal here too, but currently this is packed in there pretty good. But I may, I may just electrical tape it to this part all the way to around. We'll see. Okay, so this is where we're at. I was test running it, but I actually needed to get the shell back on, because when you put the shell back on here, okay, and you, this piece moves. As I was showing you earlier, all of this section kind of pulls out, unless, of course, you put the shell back on to test it, because underneath there's that large screw. It's this one. Let me see if I can show you. Can't show you, but it's that one right in there, center screen right now. That screw goes up and it goes into, let's put this back on the track. It goes up and into this, it holds this area in place, and then it screws and connects up in here, and it holds it all in place. So I wasn't getting the perfect test run I wanted. I don't have any lights hooked up here. The last segment I showed you was a rough cut of the wiring, and that has proven successful so far now that the shell is on. And the shell is very easy to take back on and off just from that one screw. All right, so let's take a crack back at this and get back under there and remove the shell again. And in doing so, I'll just show you how I originally removed it. So as I was talking about, there's the screw, the one that runs up this way, which is right here. Just unscrew that. You just loosen that one up. Okay, take that all the way out. It's a long one, so. Okay, pull that all the way out. And this area will move on you, so first thing you want to do is, this part should lift up very easily. So we have the two notches back here. You just pull them towards up, and then let's turn it back over. And the reason I do that is so we don't misalign some of this, which, as you can see, okay, already has happened, because this area does move. You just have to be very careful, and they do go back into place, but it's a very sensitive thing that I've kind of just continued to align as I go. Okay, so here's what I did. You can see I electrical taped the motor to the chassis, wrapped it all the way around. So that's pretty snug and in place, okay, without using the extra metal screws and having them touch this metal part of the chassis. So we just eliminated that, okay? For your sake, if you want, I'm not going to do it here. I'm going to change it in the lock programmer. But your orange wire will want to go over here if you want to have the proper front and back, and your gray wire. You'll want to flip this gray and this orange, these motor lead wires. But I'm going to change that in lock programmer because I pulled this decoder from another locomotive I was working on just to test it, but we're going to go with this one. And the wires are cut very short. Right now they fit perfect. So we're going to go with the way I have it here, but I wanted to note that for you all. Okay, so we're done there. And when we come back, we'll figure out where we're going to put our speaker. And then also, I was debating whether or not to keep these lights, okay? The lights that are currently in this locomotive, these are the wires, front and back, from the original locomotive that we trimmed down to separate it from the chassis. I'm really digging the light bulb feel, and the LEDs I have are the little square ones, and I don't have a nice clear lens for these, and I like this look. So that's where we're at, and I'll be back. Let's see what we can do. Okay, so under further review with our lighting, I have done some testing, and I am going to stick with the lights that came with this locomotive. They're actually not too bad, and I like them. I like the way they look, the way they feel. They're a little different. They're not warm white. They do have that warm orange tint, but not quite as bad as, say, other manufacturers. So I went through a series of different resistors, and I chose a resistor that is capable of handling between 5 and 9 volts. It's bright. It's not super bright, but it's definitely bright, because I don't have any information on what these bulbs are. I'm guessing they're 12 volt, but I do not want to burn them out. It's just the way I roll. I'm going to connect all of this wiring and I'm going to show you how I did it, because recently on a few of my other decoder and lighting installs, I had some questions, so we'll go about that now. The first thing I do when I add resistors is I cut a big chunk of these off. So I trim them down to something like this here, because I trim both ends of these really tight, because I just don't want that whole rod getting in the way. And that's all I want to cover with shrink tubing too. So I usually trim those down pretty good, okay? I apply some solder to both ends, okay? To both ends, we add solder. I tin them a little bit, just kind of roll it over the top on both sides, just to get enough solder like that. I'm sorry, you might not have seen that. I was off camera. Okay. This length's good. I'm going to trim these down to about that same length. We could go shorter, but I just want to have enough room when we pull the shell off. But the other thing is, we'll make these 3 wires for front, back, and common. We'll make these fairly long too. We'll probably come to about here, okay? So I'm going to do that work. Then I'm going to strip the wires, flux them, and we'll get back. Okay, so we're back. I'll show you what I've got here. So we've got one from each end, has resistor. And then right now I've joined the common ones together, and we're going to join that by attaching the blue to these 2 common ones, okay? And then we'll take the colored wires, back yellow, front white, and we'll attach them to the ones with the resistors. We'll just solder them together, okay? And make sure back down here you've got your shrink tubing before you join them all together. All three of these wires, okay? I'm going to join these by soldering them, and we'll be back. Okay, so here's what you should have, okay? So, got our common wire connected to both, front and back, and then we've got our white going to the front, yellow going to the back, all right? So, I'm going to go test this out, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so the lights are in great working order, okay? So once again, this is how you want to do this, okay? Let's flip this upside down and you'll see. Okay? That's how you run your wires. So I'm going to go and I'm going to shrink all this tubing up with my soldering iron here. I don't know how you guys go about it, but I do it like that. All right. We'll get that in order and see if I can't get the speaker in here too while we're at it. Be back. Okay, so I positioned our speaker on the back side here. Right here, up against the decoder. Okay, now just going to attach the brown wires to these two tabs again, these two here, okay? Well, here's another one in the books. Mantua 060, steam locomotive number 1251, running great. Used the original LEDs, installed an ESU decoder, and I really like the lights. They're warm, but they're not that warm and orange like other manufacturers, as I said. Thing's running great. Let's reverse direction. Go a little bit slower. Get our backlight coming in. Well, thanks again for everybody who joined me on this install. And as I said, I haven't seen a whole lot of these done online, so hopefully the tips I gave you here will help if you have one of these locomotives. Thanks again.